The 2024 general elections is a very crucial one for our dear country for a number of factors. It will signal the dusk of an era and the birth of a new era of political frontrunners who all may have the potential to lead this country one day. Last week, the New Patriotic Party, in line with their internal party mechanisms, confirmed the nomination of Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh as a running mate to Dr. Bawumia. The announcement of Matthew Opoku Prempeh came as a shock to our civil society organizations, considering his performance and conduct as Minister for Education and subsequently as a Minister for Energy. It's been almost a week into his nomination, and an upcoming flamboyant outdooring in Kumasi later today, and it is still very unclear to us, civil society, what considerations went into the decision to nominate Mr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh as the flag bearer of our country, of the New Patriotic Party. Without any prejudices, we believe that Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh possesses certain character traits and weakness that makes him unfit to occupy the second highest position of the land. And for avoidance of doubt, we shall treat these character traits, weaknesses, and incompetencies under the following subheadings, and we shall provide you right here further and better particulars to justify them. 1. We believe that Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh is extremely tribalistic and temperamental for the second highest position of the land. We believe he's an incompetent policy maker and an incompetent policy implementer as well. We believe he's a chief promoter of shady, dubious, and needless procurement that has thrown this country into a mirage of debt. We believe he has a poor working relationship with stakeholders. Finally, he's very antagonistic towards civil society and divergent opinions. So I'll take them one after the other. His tribalistic and temperamental nature. Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh, NAPO, as he's affectionately called, has earned a worthy accolade as the most publicly tribalistic public official in the Fourth Republic. 1. NAPO, as Minister for Education, transferred all votarians from the Ministry of Education. In fact, he chased out all directors and senior officers of the Ministry of Education who were votarians out of the ministry. One of his former directors confirmed to us, and would hold his name, that he was responsible for preparing Dr. Opoku Prempeh's parliamentary responses as minister. And there was a question on the floor of Parliament about e-blocks, and he has provided the accurate records of the number of e-blocks that were completed by the previous government to Dr. Opoku Prempeh. But as characteristic of Dr. Opoku Prempeh, he rejected those figures and said those figures were not accurate and wanted to go to Parliament with his own figures. The directors insisted on using the official figures to prepare the brief for Dr. Opoku Prempeh, ended up creating enmity between he and the minister, and eventually he was chased out of the ministry. But in fact, when Dr. Opoku Prempeh took over at the Ministry of Education in 2017, there were close to 25 senior level and middle level directors of the Ministry of Education who were from the Volta region. By the time he left the office in 2021, it was left with only one. He chased all of them out just because they were Voltarians. And he believed they belonged to the opposition party. 2. NAPO's fixation and personal vendetta against Ewes and Voltarians were very documented. He was on national radio defending the exclusion of the Keta Sea defense from the budget, and threatened to publicly lead his people to also stage a protest against the government if it succumbs to the pressures from the people and make allocations for the project. NAPO, as Sector Minister of Energy, supervised the VRA to cause a reckless pillage that displaced several people along the Volta Basin. 90% of the displaced victims were Voltarians. After that reckless pillage, which should have caused his resignation as minister, he also failed to ever visit the affected victims or provide any intervention for them. NAPO, as sector minister responsible for this pillage, also failed to make any meaningful intervention for the victims, including housing, and we all know the issues. He had to take private citizens, members of parliament, and other people to raise support and intervention for the victims of the VRA's pillage, which NAPO supervised as energy minister. This goes a long way to speak to the level of hatred Dr. Opoku Prempeh has for Voltarians, to the extent that for the first time in over 30 years, he is the only minister of energy under whose watch the spillage of the Volta Dam has created an artificial disaster, displacing thousands of Voltarians, and even at the point of homelessness and turmoil, failed to intervene to bring any help to the people. This is sheer hatred that cannot be countenanced in any public officer against any ethnic group. This ethnocentric and divisive character cannot be allowed anywhere close to the second highest office of the land. 2, his incompetence as a policy maker and a policy implementer. NAPO's incompetence at formulating policy and implementing same is the worst example for any public officer. 1, NAPO, as the first education minister to supervise the implementation of the free SHS program, created the foundation for all the problems confronting the program that we see today. He failed to envision the pressure the program would have on infrastructure and failed to plan for the increased numbers. And by the third year under his leadership, we had the first ever double track system in our secondary schools. NAPO gave birth to the double track system, which has reduced drastically the contact period for SHS students, reducing quality by a greater standard. NAPO created all the problems we see in the feeding of students in our schools today. NAPO, as minister, took away the procurement of food items by the schools themselves and centralized the system in Accra and awarded contracts to his cronies to supply food to the schools. Schools to source their food items from the communities where the schools are located. Apart from the ease of convenience, reliability of supply, and cheaper prices, the decentralized system also boosted the local economy as food are sourced from farmers and local traders. Immediately NAPO took over as minister, he centralized the procurements to Accra under buffer stock and awarded shady contracts to suppliers to supply food to the schools. The impact of this was very heavy on the schools. And we've heard CHAS, which is the Head Teachers Association, calling on government to decentralize the feeding again. And all have fallen on deaf ears. NAPO was simply adamant. And today, the food served in our prisons are way better than the food served to our children in the secondary schools, thanks to NAPO. It will interest you to know that for the past 18 months, common bread have not been served in our secondary schools. And that is because of this centralized policy which NAPO introduced that took away the supply and procurement of food items from the head teachers and centralized it in Accra to his cronies, suppliers. When NAPO took over as minister in 2017, according to a report by the African Education Watch and CDD, 30% of basic school children did not have desks to sit on. By the time NAPO left office as education minister in 2021, the figure has increased to 40%. NAPO introduced a new curriculum in 2019 without any textbooks for the teachers nor students. Teachers had to rely on their own materials to develop teaching models for the kids. By the time he left office in 2021, teachers and students still have not a single textbook for the curriculum he introduced. So his policy skills and implementation skills, this is evident. And we cannot allow such level of incompetence in policy implementation to chair the economic management team, where he will be in charge of implementing economic policy that will have far greater consequences on all of us. 3. NAPO is the chief promoter of shady, dubious, and needless procurements. NAPO, as Minister for Education and Minister for Energy, supervised some of the most dubious procurements that costed this country millions of taxpayers' cedis. In 2020, NAPO awarded a contract to a company called Bluegrass to supply calculators for students. The company Bluegrass had no prior experience in the performance of such high-level supplies. Again, the contract was single-sourced to Bluegrass without any competitive tender. Again, the contract price was hugely inflated. At the time NAPO awarded the contract, the retail price of non-programmable calculators was 45 Ghana cedis. NAPO awarded the contract to Bluegrass to supply at wholesale price at 75 Ghana cedis per unit, way above even the retail price on the market. And we all know that when you're supplying wholesale, the price should even go down than the retail market price. Bluegrass only ended up supplying 416,000 out of the 853,000 units under the contract. It took his successor, Dr. Iduchum, as Minister for Education, to come and cancel that contract because of non-performance. In 2020, during the COVID-19 pandemic, whilst we were under lockdown, reeling from the impact of the pandemic, NAPO's appetite for shady and needless procurements were over the roof. He awarded a contract to a company called Edmondo, worth $1 million, to develop a learning management system for basic school children during the lockdown. The system that he developed was not usable and was never used by the ministry, and $1 million of taxpayers' money went to waste.